Hey everyone, we started a new series called Bet Ab, and it really is a translation from Hebrew meaning father's house. And we're talking about this because there's a lot of things that happen in the Bible, a lot of things that Jesus even says that are linked to the culture of the Jewish people in the Old Testament, and it helps us understand some of the things Jesus was saying and what he meant about what God's kingdom looks like and what he's come to do. And there's some really rich language, and sometimes he says things that people back then who heard it got it, but for us it kind of goes over our head and we don't even notice it because it's not the way our culture is, right? So to start off, first off, their culture was very built around family. It was centered around family, right? Here's your family, your mom, your dad, your brothers and sisters, and then it would be your clan, which would be aunts, uncles, and then it would be your tribe, which would be, distant cousins, and then it would be the nation of Israel, right? Because remember, it all started from Abraham, right? The nation of Israel, and they still kind of kept this idea of the nuclear family being the most important part. It's how you interacted with the financial sector, is where you got your job from, and it's also went along with the legal structure. Who your family was made a big difference in how things worked out in your life and who you were and what you were able to do. So that's the first thing. Also, the people lived literally in these things called bet abs. They would be family compounds, right? So there'd be a walled structure around your house, and then on the bottom floor you would keep your animals and your food that you have, and then you would cook down there, and then you would have another level, and that's where people would live, and then people would keep building on. So a dad would live there with the mom, and then they would keep having, if they had sons, their sons would move in and get married, and then they would keep building levels, extra rooms. We've heard Jesus say that, right? I go to prepare a place for you, a room for you. A lot of times we hear Christian songs that talk about Jesus building us mansions up in the sky. I don't really think that's it. It was a mistranslation, and now we kind of know a little more. But it means that God is inviting us to live in his walled family compound with him, right? Like, he is inviting us to live very closely with him and do life with him. And that's an amazing, amazing thing, right? But also there were some things going on at that time where people who didn't have a family leader, right? The family leader was the dad until the dad died, and then it went to the firstborn son. And you always hear things about the firstborn son, maybe like Jacob and Esau, or even in the story of Joseph. But the firstborn son had a very important job because they got a double portion of the inheritance from their dad, and you're like, oh, that'd be sweet to be the firstborn son, but not really, right? Because it's this huge responsibility, because you have to take care of everyone else in your family now. Like, you're in charge. If something bad happens to them, you're supposed to help them make it right. You're supposed to have enough money if they lost their land to be able to buy back their land. If they get taken hostage or a war breaks out where they are, you're supposed to go and save them, right? If they get sold into slavery because they have debts, you're supposed to be able to pay off their debts. So that's why the firstborn got extra money. It wasn't just get extra money so they could blow it on themselves. It's get extra money so you can take care of everyone else in your family. And back then, women could not work. That was not the way things happened back then. And it was all centered around the firstborn male of a family. So if a woman found herself without a husband, if her husband died, and found herself without any sons to take care of her, she literally had no way to make money. She would be destitute, homeless, and probably not be able to find food, right? But there's a great story of this in the book of Ruth, where Naomi, a Jewish woman, goes and her husband dies, and her two sons had married two women that weren't Jewish. And after her husband died, then her two sons also die. And she sits there and she looks at these two women that aren't Jewish, and she says, go back home, go back to your families, they'll take care of you. I don't have anyone to take care of me. Don't stay with me, I'm going to die. But Ruth, who isn't a Jewish person, goes, and she goes back to Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, and she finds a Jewish husband, and this man Boaz takes in Ruth and Naomi and becomes their protector. It's a story of redemption, and it shows us what God will do. If we are outside of a family, if no one is taking care of us, if we're out there all alone, God will come and take care of us. There's a Bible verse in Deuteronomy chapter 10. And it says, "For the Lord your God is the God of gods and the Lord of lords, the great and mighty and awesome one, who shows no partiality and accepts no bribes. He defends the cause of the fatherless and the widow." Right now we get why it's the fatherless, because it's so important to have a head of the household, someone who takes care of you and watches over you. So it's saying God is going to step in for those people who don't have someone to look over them, and he's going to look over them, right? And he will give them food and clothing. And he says, and you are to love foreigners too, because you were once foreigners in the land of Egypt. All right, God is reminding them that this is his heart, that no one should be outside of his family, that he wants everyone to draw in. And we should take care of people that aren't, that feel like they're on the outside and that no one cares about them and loves them. That's part of God's heart. And he called the Jewish people to do that, and he calls us to do that today. So, also, we're talking about the firstborn son. Jesus is known as the firstborn of all creation. It says here in Colossians chapter 1, it's verse 15. "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones and powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him." Right? That's an amazing thing. Jesus is the firstborn son, right? He is the one who has the responsibility of taking care of us, right? He ushers us into God's presence. He ushers us into God's family because of what he did on the cross, right? So there's all this amazing, wonderful language about firstborns and families and how they lived, and we're going to keep digging into that as we keep going on to the series, but that's kind of where we started out. Love you guys. Have a nice